Hello, friends. It is I, host Eric, host of Talking with Famous People, and tonight I bring you podcast episode 1 of Talking with Famous People. It's my second attempt at it this evening. The first one was beset with technical difficulties, and I'm going to get right into the chase here because that's one of the differences between the podcasting and normal format. So it says here the topics, and I want to refer to it to make sure that I am successfully keeping on topic. So first of all, the welcome and the beard shave. Welcome to the very first episode of Talking with Famous People podcast. Yes, I shaved my beard. I did not shave it in honor of this podcast. I shaved it to make a Halloween costume yesterday as part of a long-planned Rick costume, Rick and Morty, which was quite an effective costume, but now I'm without a beard. Yes, it does look stupid. Yes, I'm going to grow it back. Yes, I agree. I look much better with a beard. Yes, I agree. Someone needs to cover up my face. Well, it grows pretty quickly. So give me a week or so and I'll have a beard again. Thank you for joining me on this podcast. I'm live streaming it, but I'm going to upload it as a video for sure. And I'm going to try to do this format for a couple of reasons, which brings me to the next topic, which is, how is podcast different? Well, for me, it's about planning it, having a set procession of topics that are not necessarily related, and potentially having segments, for example, bringing in people to interview about something or ask questions about something, or have them present something or whatever. Potentially having musical interlude, by play a song or something like that for a couple minutes. I don't know. We'll have to see how the podcast develops. I used to podcast though with my friend Corey with a podcast called Vox Monitor, the podcast review podcast. You can find a couple of those old episodes here, they're audio only, but I've got them uploaded to YouTube. You can check those out if you want to. They're a curiosity, I guess. Some are more interesting than others. Anyhow, let's move forward. We'll see how this format develops, but I think it offers me some potentiality because it lets me talk about a variety of different topics and move through them, hopefully with a little bit more focus and order. First topic I want to talk about is how the North Korea DPRK and U.S. South Korean policy. I just read an article that was about a North Korean defector talking about how the U.S. might better diplomatically engage North Korea, and the bottom line is, what this guy says is what I've been saying for years, which is our policy regarding rogue nations should be to flood them with cheap examples of Western media. If you want peoples to become something more civilized than what they are, and that means more rights respecting, more understanding of individual autonomy, and having some sort of system that protects that equivalency of human beings from one another, then you're not going to win by threats and military force. First of all, North Korea doesn't actually want any kind of fight. What they want is this weird FE shit, you know? They want people to talk about them like they're a real country. They want Kim Jong-un wants to be respected as a world leader and stuff. That shit's cheap. That shit's easy. Give him that shit. Give him all the face he wants. Open up markets. The thing is, our punishment approach towards supposedly wrongdoing nations is exactly fucking backwards. First of all, we're punishing ourselves too, because why are we cutting off trade and stuff like that? We should be making money. The successful execution of commerce has a way of liberalizing things. Liberals, quote unquote, have these weird anti-corporate things where they think globalization is bad because these poor people are working these shitty jobs, but they're choosing those jobs over their even shittier alternative, and there seems to be no acknowledgement of that. Anyhow, the point is, what this guy is saying is, give them information. Give the people information so they can wake up a little bit. They don't know anything. They're being fed a bunch of bullshit. The same thing with the Muslim countries. How long do you think they're going to persist in this apartheid against women shit they got going on when women are seeing examples of women in other parts of the world who are free? It gets harder and harder to maintain the fiction of your insular community when you're exposed to ideation from outside that community. It's the marketplace of ideas. It's why ultimately truth and justice will win. We just have to make the people who are trying to justify bullshit sit there and engage face to face. Answer my questions. Respond on point. That kind of shit needs to happen. But to the extent that we're dealing with other countries and we're the U.S., then it's silly of us to try to push them around, to try to force them to do things. People might sometimes do what they are forced to do, but nobody emerges from that saying, oh, boy, I learned a lesson. I'm not going to mess with those guys anymore. I'm going to do what they say because they're going to force me to otherwise. They emerge from it absolutely despising the party that forced them. People don't like to be forced. So, there are much better ways of allowing an ecosystem of information fluidity to solve the problem in and of itself. If we keep taunting North Korea, Kim Jong-un may end up shooting those missiles because I don't think at the end of the day, if he loses all his legitimacy, he might as well blow up the whole fucking peninsula. The whole Korean peninsula will be toast, And because he's got, as far as he's concerned, his whole ontology is built into this notion that he's supreme leader of this country and that his family, this is his third generation of it, and it's a dynasty that's supposed to last forever. And I mean, he's deeply invested in these mythologies, so much so that he can't conceive of a life after them probably, and I don't think he's above blowing up the whole fucking peninsula to make his point if it gets down to it, if he feels too pinned. So those are my thoughts on North Korea and South Korea and the U.S. policy. Our current policy of militarizing with missile defense systems and of saber rattling and of Trump's idiocy is not going to be a good thing. All right, so we've been going on for 7 minutes 40 seconds, and I'm going on to topic number 4 already: expectations versus predictions. So what came about with this question is somebody asked me, Ben Shapiro, his name sounds familiar. I'll get to that a little bit later. If you want to clarify what you're talking about, I'll address it when we get to number 6. So the reason expectations and predictions came up was because an earlier topic that I nixed from this because it's too expansive was a year in review wrap up. I may add it if this goes quickly, I guess. But the question was also about the upcoming year. What are your predictions or expectations for the given year? And so I thought rather than talk about those topics per se, I would talk about the difference between expectations and predictions, which express semantically different states of being. So an expectation expresses an objective prediction that is the prediction you think is most likely to come true, whereas a prediction means you could make a prediction that you could predict a long shot prediction. You're not saying it's likely to come true, but you're just thinking it's a lot more likely to come true than most people think. So in that instance, a prediction could not be an expectation, but an expectation is always going to be a prediction. Some expectations will be 100%. I expect at some point I'll have to go pee. That's 100%, right? Unless I die before I have to pee. Kimberly, why are you... Kimberly has been doing a wonderful job of correcting me today. So,
that's a given.
What? You're going to have to pee?
Expected to go pee, but like an expectation is something that you kind of have It's like I look at it as in a relationship. If you have expectations, you are kind of having expectations. Whereas if you're having predictions, you're kind of predicting that something's going to happen, and it's just either because it's predictable or because you just got a strong feeling.
Okay, so you point out a really interesting distinction there between the connotations of expectations and predictions is from a relationship perspective. Expectations conveys a notion that you have a standard that must be met or you're not going to be satisfied. Predictions usually convey a lack of faith in the other party or faith in the other party's eventual doing of X, whether it's doing something crazy like getting in another bar fight and ending up in jail, or
positive.
It could be positive. I predict that you're gonna really come into your own and make the most out of your poo. Right. Those would be different in that context for sure. Expectations and predictions are different. The context in which we were discussing the difference originally was for the new year, for 2018. What do you expect versus what do you predict? Now, in that instance, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could be broad and say, I expect that this to happen because according to what's been going on so far, this is kind of probably what's going to happen. Or you can, and I guess there are very similar, I guess, when you look at it in that broad
In that
perspective.
context. Well, I mean, the thing is, I would say the difference in part is expectations seem more personally centric and predictions are more external world.
Yeah.
So you're more likely to make predictions about things having nothing to do with you, and you're more likely to express expectations about things that you expect to happen to you.
Yeah.
So, okay, I just thought the topic of expectations versus predictions was an interesting semantic distinction, and Ken made it much more interesting by pointing out the relationship meanings of the words, which I hadn't even considered. So that goes to show you where the FE-TI combo is synergistic greater than the sum of its parts, because she allows my TI to be more active because she presents FE perspectives on things in an objective language, because TI and FE share an objective language. That was a little side note that wasn't on the list of things I was going to talk about. So, okay. He is very popular ENTP on YouTube who is exposing bad guys and speaking up for our rights. Oh, okay, cool. Libertarian type fellow. The importance of direct response to bullshit is number 5. So, the thing is, there's been a person who's been hammering at me about Taylor and some of the stuff that's gone on in Pratt, Kansas, and particularly about my video in which I accused Undersheriff Barrett of perjury. And this person has responded in ways that are examples of the kind of bullshit I want to explain what they're doing. So, okay, a person calls herself Olivia Gossington. It could be Demon Windu, I don't know. But it's interesting enough that I want to talk about it. This video, first of all, says it's just like a joiners thing, like you're one of us, you're one of us. This video here says, I always thought you looked familiar, and it links to a person, a scene of a crazy homeless guy ranting on the sidewalk. Now, so okay, these are not arguments, right? These are taunts. That's the first thing to note. And for whatever you want to, whatever value you want to place in taunts, don't mistake them for arguments. But I address it as though it were an argument anyway. There's nothing about this video that justifies your complete dismissal of my legitimacy as a speaker and a human being. There's plenty of substantial factual material here that you could choose to address, but you're desperate to avoid the content of my words, Olivia. Shame on you, you cowardly goose. And then she responds, the only video I've seen on your channel with any substance or basis in fact was the one where you and Lord Yaylor violated a multinational treaty and opened fire on me and my unarmed flock. Right, because this is a goose. Yet somehow I'm the coward. As for the vid, I dismissed it out of hand because you claim to have all the evidence to demonstrate the Undersheriff of Pratt County committed perjury, and yet you present none. Assertions of evidence are not evidence, and that which can be asserted with evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Okay, well, there's a certain legitimacy to this. I didn't present the affidavit. It's not yet public record. So, but because it's not yet public record, because he's not yet been sentenced, and the court proceedings are not over yet, I can't access that document. I have made assertions about it, and my point is, first of all, you lie, Goose, because the video showed only me firing any weapon, not me and Taylor. You lie about what I say. I do substantiate my claims. I state what the affidavit says and why it is necessarily a lie. If you wish to rebut this claim, you must provide substantiation to the contrary. Instead, you lie about what I say. So then she wants to quibble about complicity. Why does it matter who pulled the trigger? Taylor was complicit in the violation, an accessory and accomplice. He is just as legally liable as you are. If you video a crime and fail to report the crime taking place, that means you're also liable for criminal prosecution. Talking about an affidavit is not presenting evidence. Okay, this is true, but again, it's not in public record yet. In fact, the only evidence you seem to have is the anecdotal variety on the word of two junkie losers who can't seem to get their lives together. They had their lives together fine until the police ripped their family apart and jailed Taylor without a conviction for the better part of 6 months. It's always someone else's fault. Yeah, it's the fault of the people who illegally searched his home, who stole his stuff, who ripped his daughter from him, who put her in the hands of a drunk, even though he had harmed nobody. There was nobody saying, "Hey, he's violated my rights. Let's get him of a crime." He hadn't done anything. That's the problem you have. On the word of two junkie losers. I mean, the thing is, I know these people. They had a good home. They were raising children there, and they were well cared for, extremely well cared for.
I wonder if this silly goose knows them.
Well, I mean, who knows? It could be Demon Windu. It could be, however, like the could be Tracy Beverlin. Who knows?
I think it is. I think it's somebody.
I think it might be Tracy Beverlin.
But it's somebody that. Why would there be so much hostility?
Okay, so yeah, right. The thing is, on the word of two junkie losers, I take Taylor and I take Taylor's word about anything over the sheriff or the district attorney, because for one thing, I've known him for a long time. He's a good person. He's not a liar, and I've seen him interact with people. I've not heard anybody make any claims about him doing any harm to anybody. This is the problem you have. What makes somebody a loser? Doing drugs or being violent with people? Locking them in cages without good cause? And then this bullshit here. If you're really certain, then why not journey to Pratt County and do what the lawyer failed to do and right the wrong and clear your friend? After all, you're not a coward, are you? You're a brave man. Go tell straight to Mr. Barrett's face. Let him know he can't hide when Inspector Giles is on the job. Really, why stop there? You tell it to the Pratt County District Attorney, and hey, why not the judge, too? Well, I've called the Pratt County District Attorney. I was told she was going to call me back. She never did. I would love to talk to the judge. I would love to talk to Mr. Barrett. In fact, I will call tomorrow. I'm going to call the Sheriff's Department, talk to him. I want to call the District Attorney. But yeah, I don't think I actually want to go to Kansas. I have a feeling that I would be arrested. I mean, these people are scumbags. It's like I have a outstanding ticket, I think, in Kansas too. So, on the word of two junkies, I live in California and cannot afford to travel to Kansas anymore. As a general rule, members of the public are not legally required to intervene when they witness a crime, nor must they report it to the police. In some situations, depending on the specific state law, they may make a citizen's arrest, but as an option, not a requirement. The reason for not requiring intervention and reporting is to leave the policing to the professionals and avoid turning all citizens into informants. If you dispute my accounting of the affidavit, all you need to do is substantiate a rebuttal. Instead, you commit an ad hominem attack, display a shockingly poor understanding of legal obligations and rights, and generally should kill yourself. I was getting a little angry at this point. Goosington, you should not kill yourself. And so then she criticized the fact that I quoted from lawyers.com. And then makes a bad analogy about if Host Taylor said, Host Taylor here. Host Taylor and I are in the park. He's got a Glock 9. And he's going up to an old lady. He's going to rob the old lady with a Glock 9. You did not just steal her purse. Take your trigger off the finger. Oh, yes, that's much more clear to me now. Okay, well, my understanding of legal obligations are poor indeed because I'm just a silly goose. Yeah, fuck you. So far, you've not made an actual single argument or response. I already am informed, hence there's no reason for me to access the scholarly literature. I figured whatever would be good enough for you since it's substantially more than you've brought to the table. But obviously you need to do some reading before you sit at the grown-ups table. So here, moron, read it in a law journal. You're the kind of guy who chooses the fancy china with a turd on it over the steak on a paper plate. Here again, shit for brains. Your idiocy evokes Demon Windu's trolling. There were no geese seen in the video, no evidence of any geese shot in the video, and the purported birds are referred to alternately as ducks and geese. Regardless, read the links if you actually care to understand why your perspective on complicity is wrong. And then they just say whatever. So, look, the thing about this is there's a lot of ways in which focusing on the law, I've clicked the same one twice. I meant to put two different links. Anyway, there's another one that talks about complicity theory. But the point is, that's how people dissemble. What I mean by dissembling is they obfuscate the important truths in order to get you bogged down in details that are irrelevant. For example, it doesn't matter if they could stretch the interpretation of the law to make it such that Taylor filming me purportedly shooting at geese made Taylor an accomplice in the crime. He didn't. It's insane to think that, because first of all, there's a mens res component, which is you have to have a knowledge of guilt. Neither of us knew, to the best of my knowledge, going into that occasion, whatever happened there. Neither of us walked into that occasion with any knowledge that there were going to be any birds there, that we were going to shoot at any birds, or that it was illegal to shoot at any birds we purportedly may have shot at. There was absolutely no knowledge of guilt, because how the fuck am I supposed to know what fucking bird laws there are? I don't know. Should I have checked? Sure, I don't know. And it's like the first time I ever shot a gun. Anyway, the point is, if it were the case that I shot at those geese, nothing about this qualifies deeming him an accomplice unless you stretch all interpretation of the law beyond all possible reasonable meaning. Not to mention the fact you're taking away from the reality that there's nothing for them to find at Taylor's house related to this crime purportedly committed by me, because there's no indication in the video that anything was shot. So what the fuck are they going to find? An invisible goose duck thing?
No, her opinion is that just because he's a loser, we need to just put him away.
Right. Well, of course, this is the thing.
Let's just find all little things.
And
make him a loser.
When you actually want to pin these people down to some sort of standard of decency, and you hammer home the fact, now hold on a second, you locked this person up for the better part of 6 months without convicting him of anything, stole his family from him, ripped his daughter, his first grade daughter, who loved and adored her father and who had a safe, stable home environment, and put her in the hands of a drunken ex-wife who's scrounging together quarters to buy her next fucking half pint. Justify that behavior by saying that you can stretch the letter of the law, maybe to sort of squeak out some bullshit complicity accomplice charge for Taylor that was not charged, by the way. This is justification for a search warrant. If we allow people to bog us down in this shit, this is how good people go to jail for bullshit. Because every single person in District Attorney Tracy Beverland's life, every single person in Under Sheriff Barrett's life should be shaming them continuously for their bad behavior. They are wicked. They have accomplished wicked deeds against good people. And they've had ample opportunity to back away from these wicked deeds. And they've accomplished them in illegal ways. I cannot access the affidavit and present it to you right now. It is not available for me. But when the court proceedings are over, it will be, and I will produce the affidavit, and we'll see how similar it is to my description of the affidavit. Regardless, they produced the second search warrant justified by a trash pull, whereas federal courts have already ruled that that is insufficient justification for a search warrant for drugs. Just because you find drugs in somebody's trash can, they pointed out, I believe it was the Sixth Circuit, just because you find drugs in somebody's trash can, that's not evidence they have drugs, that's evidence they had drugs. Good point, Sixth Circuit, if it was the Sixth. And also note that once it's out on the street, anybody can walk by and put something in that trash can. So what's vastly more important ultimately than quibbling about details like this with, people who don't understand that human lives are being wrecked by this bullshit. It's not something to troll about, and it's certainly not something to be so catastrophically wrong as to think that the destruction of these lives I got a full pack almost. Thank you. Destruction of these lives is justified by some whisper of a complicity charge on a video of a guy firing a gun for the first time in complete ignorance that he was potentially even could have been committing a crime because I was on private land, which, by the way, the cops trespassed upon without getting a search warrant to search for evidence, of which they found none. So I'm really upset about the Taylor stuff in general. And I think that it is well past due time that we as the average citizens hold these kind of people accountable for the actual impacts of their actions. The most important reason why it is okay to do this is they have no justification under rule of law. Such laws are always applied arbitrarily. And the reason it necessarily must be the case is because nobody complains if you let go of somebody who's got drugs on them. Let's see what happens when we have drug laws like anti-marijuana laws. Well, 2 cops in New York City busted 3 young people. They were 18 or 19. 2 dudes and a chick. They shooed the 2 dudes away. They took the chick in the van. They told her to tell her friends not to follow the van. They parked the van. They raped her. They told her to keep her mouth shut and let her go. So she got to trade getting busted for pot for getting raped. They handcuffed her to shit in the van and raped her. Why are they able to do that? Because they get to threaten shit on a law in which nobody's been harmed. Nobody's called in and said, oh, you need to bust this guy, he stole my car. Instead, it's up to the cops. You know what the cop told me after he arrested me and after I'd paid the fine and I got out of there, was about to drive away? He said, I would have let you go if you told me the truth. He said that to me. So, did I get arrested for lying or for marijuana? Every single time a drug law is enforced, it is enforced arbitrarily, necessarily. Because cops don't always enforce them. They enforce it when they happen upon it, or they enforce it because they've profiled somebody as likely being a drug user. They don't enforce it because somebody calls it in. Oh my gosh, I think my neighbor's smoking marijuana in his house. I'm somehow harmed by that. No. People like to draw distinctions between different drugs. Oh, well, meth is different though, Eric. No, it's not. It's the same principles. The fact is, if meth is so bad because it makes people do such bad things, then let's convict them and prosecute them for the crimes that they commit when they're on meth, not for the meth itself. Because, as we see, it's not necessarily the case that correlation is always going to apply. Taylor was no criminal, regardless of whether he was on meth. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant. What's relevant is there's been a great harm down here. People have been victimized. There's been a crime committed. A crime against a good family, a good man, a good father. A crime against a little girl. So it's important that we don't allow the little bullshits to slide by. We don't say, well, yeah, well, I mean, I guess he, if he were more careful, he wouldn't, because he brought this on himself, he didn't have to do that. Bullshit! Nobody brings unjustified violence upon themselves. Definitionally, it's unjustified. And as we've indicated, there's no rule of law justification because every application of this law is arbitrary. That makes it not an example of rule of law. A rule of law has to be applied the same to everybody. There's absolutely no way if Joe Smith is a murderer, kills your loved one, the cop goes, yeah, well, Joe's a friend of mine, though, so I'm going to let him go. That's not going to fly. Oh, wrong. Joe Smith killed somebody else. Or Joe gives us good deals at 7-Eleven, all the cops, so he's kind of a friend of ours, and we know he's killed a couple people, but we don't want to bust him. He's cool. Not gonna fly, unless Joe's a cop. Then it might fly, but I mean, people are gonna complain, right? People are gonna complain. Who's gonna complain if he let me go in Oklahoma because I told him the truth? Thanks, Mom. Who's gonna complain? Nobody. I might. I'd talk about it afterwards. How it's a proof that it's just all bullshit. If you think that doing, buying, or selling drugs justifies a criminal sentence, a jail sentence, you need to do some serious soul searching. You're advocating for America's human rights clusterfuck. As the jailer himself said, well before he got in any trouble on this shit, drug laws are the human rights violations everyone's cool with. Yeah? Yeah? It's time to stop being cool with it. It's time to stop treating criminal thugs like Undersheriff Barrett and Tracy Beverlin as though they were regular human beings. Treat them like the scumbag they are. They don't deserve to be treated respectfully at all. They deserve to be shamed at every moment. Not only are they ruining people's lives because they can, but they're not even following their own fucking rules. Okay. Enough ranting about that for right now. Okay. Facial hair is coming back. Yeah, I had to shave it for a costume. I think it looks terrible too. I don't like having no beard. I will grow back as soon as possible. Alright. Now wrap up and answering chat. Well, that's what I'm doing right now. He's more of an ENTJ. Who, Ben Shapiro? I'll have to watch him. You know, I really don't look at the competition at all out there. I don't know what the people are doing and stuff. I have had people recommend to me a number of times to do a podcast type format. So, this is my first episode of a podcast. It, as you see, followed the topics, covered those topics. In the future, we'll probably have some little segments. Maybe I'll schedule a song in there, maybe a guest or two. And time them out. A certain amount of time to each segment. Try to always lock it in under an hour. Today we're looking at 35 minutes. Stephen Molyneux. I've heard of him too. I've seen a little bit of his video. I don't know. The thing I've encountered with wrongness policers in general is they're not meta-rational, which is to say they have an affiliation. Now you might think, well, Eric, you have an affiliation, you're a libertarian. Well, yeah, but I acknowledge the need to validate some other modalities of understanding. So it's not like I'm not a anarcho-capitalist or whatever. I do believe in the state, and I believe it should persist for as long as it remains necessary. At least to the extent that such thing can be a belief, which is to say, when I become president, and I do plan to become president someday, my agenda will be one of principlist state reduction and attempting to choose the order of operations and severity and where I want to make compromises and where I want to be tough based on actual impacts to people's lives. So, cut the liberal stuff last. It's fine. We can cut the military first. I just want to reduce the federal government to its proper place in the larger scope of things, which should be subordinate, really, to the state governments and to local governments. My understanding of how practically a well-functioning society ought to operate, that you have to have the most expansive lawmaking and enforcing powers locally, and the least most remotely, with the more centralized forms of government tasked with policing those forms of government beneath them.
Eric, do you just want to be the only person in this podcast, or can I join you?
Yeah, go right ahead. Come on in. What do you got to say?
Okay, because I have an interesting case that I was looking at. So, in the most objective way possible, I'll tell you the facts. The victim had her backpack stolen. A couple of weeks later, police routed the suspect was arrested on the charges of theft for the same crime. He was then detained in Rikers Prison in New York State. Under the Constitution, the rights are aligned to a speedy and fair trial. He was detained in Rikers for 3 years. Under that, he spent over 1,000 hours in confinement by himself. He was dropped the charges eventually, but he committed suicide at 22 years of age.
Well,
his race was a black male as an adolescent.
Well, I mean, why did that happen? Because we have so many people crowding the prisons who didn't do anything wrong. He did something wrong. He committed a crime. He stole a backpack, presumably. He never was convicted of it, so we don't know that. But let's say he did. At least that's a real crime. Now, the reason why he got stuck in jail like that and slipped through the cracks or whatever is because so much behavior has been criminalized that the prisons are chock full of people who are there for non-crimes. So there's not much attention to be given to any individual person because, after all, the majority of the prison population is there unjustly to begin with. So who the fuck cares about somebody else who's there unjustly for, you know? It poisons the whole system. But at least they arrested somebody for a crime. Now, was he actually guilty? We don't know because the justice system fucked up. Because why? It was running all those drug cases through the justice system.
But do you think that drug dealers should be held accountable
For what?
More so than
Accountable for what?
because they purposely are selling substances that have consequences. They're like gaining profit from misery of people, like and like crime and violence.
No. Somebody wishes to purchase an object that they have, and they wish to engage in that contractual exchange with that person. That's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't matter if I'm dealing the drugs, buying the drugs, selling the drugs, doing the drugs. It doesn't matter as long as it's consensual and I'm not forcing it on anybody. It's not. I'm not doing anything wrong.
I agree with that. But why there's so many people who violent gangs, etc., or overdoses because it's illegal and it has to happen in the underworld, which is highly creates stress and tension, such as turf wars. So if they weren't, it's like the forbidden fruit. If something isn't forbidden, you don't desire it as much.
Right. Well, I mean, to the extent that we've got empirics on it, Portugal provides them, and they've shown vastly improved drug situation since they decriminalized. So, I'm not in favor of decriminalization. I'm in favor of total legalization of everything, by which I mean I'm in favor of the government getting out of the way of policing drugs entirely or regulating the obtaining of them. They can regulate if they want to regulate something. They want to regulate to make sure the drug companies are actually giving you the drugs that they say they're giving you, and like they're not putting. Oh, we decided to put a little bit of baking soda in here because we're running kind of low on the actual amphetamines. Good enough. Yeah, I don't want that to happen. I don't think that needs to be regulated, but I get that a lot of people do, and it's a complicated argument to make as to how it's going to work without any kind of regulation like that. It's a liability thing. It's you have to rely on people's avoidance of liability to
it's like the whole thing about corporations. They're pretty much treated a loophole, which a corporation is a person. So instead of suing those in power who fucked up people's lives, they say you can't because how can you sue a corporation? Because under the law, they are a person. That doesn't make any sense.
You can sue corporations.
No, but like under certain law, I forget which one it is, but they're saying they argue for corporations being a person.
Okay, well, see, that's often misrepresented, okay? It's not that corporations are considered people in that constitutional ruling. In fact, the actual Citizens United case, which people think afforded corporations personhood, did no such thing. It made a distinction between corporations and people, and it made a further distinction between anonymous speech and non-anonymous speech. And it basically stripped corporations of the power to claim speech rights for anonymous speech. But it upheld an already existing precedent that said corporations do have speech rights for non-anonymous political speech, and it was the correct ruling. I mean, there's no reason why a corporation oughtn't to be able to contribute to a political candidate. The only justifications for it are mechanical. In other words, well, we don't like the fact that somebody's going to try to be getting a politician representing the country, but they're actually representing the interests of this company or something. Well, look, that's going to happen no matter what. Everybody's going to have their own set of interests that they represent and beliefs and personal accomplishments that they want to see done or whatever. So the thing is, what we need to do is be very clear about understanding what sort of things do we want to hear from, what sort of answers do we want to hear, and what do those answers convey to us. Instead of asking them, well, who's paying your advertisements? Who the fuck cares? I don't care if it's ExxonMobil. I don't care if it's Aunt Joe. What I want to know is, what's your position on the scope of legislative authority regarding environmental regulation between the EPA and blah, blah, blah. What's your position on that? It's like people need to have an understanding that they're not just asking about their pet issue. Well, how do you stand on abortion? They ought to be asking, well, how did you reach your conclusion on abortion? Or how did you reach, I don't care what it is, but how did you reach your conclusion? How did you reach your conclusion on meowity meow? Okay, detach from your strongly held belief and now argue the opposite side. Can you do that? then you might be qualified. If you can't do that, you're not qualified. You're not qualified to do anything. You're qualified to go sit in a pile of shit and rub it on your face all day.
Yeah, my question is, like, I guess in reference to in politics, it seems as though anybody can be representative, but because of the lack of resources, people who have genuinely good ideas, such as yourself, will not be, most likely in their lifetime, not attain representation. So kind of how do you balance that without restricting, I guess, the free market of, if you want corporations to fund your campaign, like you think it should be allowed. But like, can the common person get a corporation to fund it so that they can afford to run?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I don't think I need to get a corporation to afford to run. I think I can, you know, if you could build a groundswell and you take it really seriously and you go out and campaign and stuff, and I can start to attract some actual audiences and get some campaign contributions and stuff, then that's fine. The thing I need to be, the advantage I would bring to a campaign would be my desire to actually constantly talk about meaningful things. I would give reporters things to actually talk about, not just boring policy shit either. I'd be a straight shooter and call it like it is all throughout the whole campaign, and I would be tearing people to pieces. I would be the most interesting typeset that any reporter can get. It's not like fucking Ron Paul kind of interesting. I mean, somebody who's got the, like, willing to tangleness of Trump, but actually says things, you know, and who's got a lot of FB, like meh 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 meh, that people like to think is engaging, but is not saying stupid ass ranty shit. Like, I want to talk about this thing here that says in the chat about Ben Shapiro. He's very popular at EHP, and it says Shapiro has quickness at EHP, but acts seemingly as a judger, although he is not in MBTI terms. Well, I'm not sure what that means in terms of act like a judger, but I think there's a distinction to be made in general between meta-rationalism and rationalism. Rationalism prioritizes TI constructions, is purely principlist, is at war. It's at war with alternate worldviews. So maybe he's still there. I don't know.
My problem with Shapiro is mostly on his foreign policy planks. Like, he still has the view that we as Americans should be the police of the world because we have moral authority over such regimes. That's
Nonsense.
my major issue with him.
Yeah, super nonsense on multiple reasons. This most notably, the reason it's nonsense is it doesn't work to accomplish the goals we say it's going to accomplish. It's consistently proven not to for decades. It's insane to think that, and we need to engage people intellectually. We need to engage everybody directly about ideas, and we need to disseminate our Western media. We need to disseminate the metaphysical happenstance of liberty, so that if you're in some culture where you're oppressed, you're seeing all these images of people being free and treating each other decently and being equals and having rights, and then things start to improve in general. The way to accomplish anything is not to go blow people up. It's fucking moronic. Even if you successfully force people to do shit, they hate you for forcing them. You gotta reach some sort of compromise, or you gotta make sure both parties feel they're getting something out of it, or else you're not. You may win this round, but you're not. You're losing the war. You're making it unwinnable. You know.
I wanted to say was that, like, quite in all honesty, I've always wanted to go into politics, but I know for myself that I would be very not be able to handle the constant criticism and spotlight and like everything to deal with it. Like, I think I'd be morally, like, the moral corruptions would really get to me after a while. But in all seriousness, like, if you are, I don't know if you're thinking, like in the moment, I want to run for politics. But if you actually ever act on that, like
I'm going
contact
to.
me, because I'd be very interested in helping with your campaign of being a member of that.
I will do that, Rosalyn, and thank you for the offer. And I'm definitely going to be entering politics because, well, here's the thing. I'm already much more informed about world affairs and stuff than pretty much any politician because I'm a debate coach. And that actually requires you to actually be prepared. Whereas being a congressman has no such requirement. If I understood things as poorly as congressmen do, I'd be out of a job. You know, my kids wouldn't win debate tournaments. We'd get embarrassed. We have to actually know things.
Yeah. I think I wanted to say with that, but you're in California, which is a super liberalized state, and how are you going to get through that barrier if you're interested at least in local politics? And also, like, if people find these videos, once you get scrutinized, people are going to find talking with famous people. They're going to look at you and your behavior, like even what you're doing now. Are you doing it wrong or backing? They're going to look at that and they're going to catch you character.
Well, here's the thing. I expect to hear a lot about stuff about that. And my response will necessarily be, these things you're talking about are examples of how your thinking needs to evolve, because you've mistaken a behavior that you associate with something bad for actually something bad. And there's a big, big difference. Just because you think this correlates with blah doesn't mean that you should use that opinion to evaluate me. After all, if in fact you believe that smoking marijuana makes you stupid and unqualified, then check your opinion. You've got a great example here. I'll smoke some marijuana, and then you listen to me and point out where I'm stupid and unqualified and how I don't know anything. Okay? Or point out how I'm slowed down too much by the marijuana to possibly function effectively as a diplomat, communicator, or leader of the free world. Because the reality is, after I pull this bong rip, I'm the same as I am right now. My relationship with marijuana is particularist. It is unique to me. I've been smoking marijuana since I was 14 years old. That's over 3 decades. So, if in fact the claims that parties who are aghast at marijuana are accurate, namely that it makes you dumb, it makes you lazy, well, then they should condemn those things. Condemn dumbness and laziness, because that correlation that you're drawing doesn't exist here. You can't point to examples of me being dumb or lazy, especially if I'm running for president. I want people who bring up these questions to come and get fucking hammered about it. You know? Well, yeah, but we saw a video. Yes, you did see a video of me smoking marijuana. Now you're going to sit here and hear how fucking stupid you are to bring it up. You know? And that's important. What this country needs is somebody who's strong, who's willing to bring the fucking hammer to people who insist on wrongnesses that are unjustified. And they need somebody who's able to understand the practical realities. Things are going to require compromise and some sort of policy agenda that doesn't destroy the existing infrastructure or get rid of rule of law in favor of executive orders or make nonsensy things happen like the Trump administration does. It also needs somebody who's intelligent enough to hang with other world leaders, even the smart ones, which there aren't very many, really, who's informed enough to know what's actually going on in the world, so he's not like, okay, send me now, so what's going on in the world now? Everybody keep me up. No, I'll be briefing other people about what's going on. They additionally need somebody who is committed to nonviolence. I understand as president, there may be circumstances where I would be required to use military force in order to protect the country or support the good of the country. I'm not a pacifist. However, people need to understand that I'm not Obama. I'm not going to go in there and just keep on drone attacking people. I'm ending that shit right away. Period. There's no fucking way we're going to go drone attack people. We're not in a state of war. We're not in a state of war. Nobody's declared war on these people.
I was disappointed with Trump because he wanted to prolong the Afghanistan campaign.
We are not at war with Afghanistan. Why are we there? Last I checked, we're not at war with Afghanistan.
No.
I don't remember Congress declaring war against Afghanistan. Go ahead.
Just on abortion, because that's more of a sensitive topic for me personally, because I am like a person of faith. And from my opinion, I think I don't know, because I do respect people's individual liberty to make their choice, but morally, I still believe that birth begins at conception, so I feel as though I can't justify abortion.
Yeah, it's just unjustifiable. I'm pro-life. And not because I want to necessarily be pro-life or that I care a lot about it. It's because it has all the winning arguments, period. I tried to be pro-choice and make those arguments, and they just lose. There's no normative framework that consistently applies, justifies abortion. Period. So, I mean, the thing is, I don't care about it particularly. It's not an issue that's particularly cogent to my life, but to the extent that I have a position on it and would have to sign or not sign legislation or something, I would have to veto any pro-abortion legislation, and I'd have to sign most abortion restricting limits legislation. Keeping in mind, of course, that I prefer not to see any of it, and I wouldn't make a big deal out of it.
I think a lot of, as you're a libertarian, would describe. Of course, I strive. People should strive for independence, but those who genuinely fall on hard times, and I think a lot of people advocate getting rid of the social welfare system. What system would you have in place to support those who genuinely fall on hard times?
Okay, well, my position on government spending is the last things I want to cut are those that are most directly distributive of money to citizens within the country. So that includes social welfare stuff. I do want to cut government spending, including social welfare stuff, but I probably won't get to most of that social welfare stuff because I think I'm in the least hurry to cut it because I know it's going to actually have impacts on people. What I want to cut first is military spending, for God's sake. It can be a teeny fraction of what it is. We shouldn't even have a standing army. And we don't need one. Nobody can claim that we are going to be subject to attack if we don't have a standing army. It's garbage. It's a garbage claim. We don't need it. We shouldn't be policing the world. So yeah, we can save a lot of money there. We need to stop Social Security. We need to be aware of the fact that there's a certain existing population that needs to be grandfathered out, and we need to begin grandsonning in new population that's not getting Social Security removed. It makes no sense in the existing world economy. It makes no sense when people go through multiple careers and often don't retire at all or work till they're 85 or 90, that the government claims that they will forcibly keep a third of your money for Social Security because they can't trust you to save for your retirement. It's insane. So, I mean, I do know that Social Security also helps disabled people. It helps, people who have poop on their face. I don't know. It helps anybody who can get it, right? Like all government programs, it becomes a possible revenue stream for somebody. That's all it is. Some people we think are deserving, some people we don't think are deserving. We can disagree about whether or not they're deserving. The important thing is none of them, that money doesn't belong to any of them. It's taken from people who earned it for no reason. If you're under 30 and you're having Social Security taken out, you will never see a dime of that. There will never be a Social Security check arriving in your mail, even though they're taking a third of your money because they say, we can't trust you to save for retirement, so we're going to save it for you. What they really mean is, we can't trust you to save for retirement, so we're going to steal your retirement money from you. You're not going to see a cent of it. You're not going to see a fucking cent of it. Social Security completely runs out of funding in 2030. There's no pool of money to fund it.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I wanted to just say,
go ahead, Rosalyn. Sorry.
oh, in your in your campaign, for those who are new to the room, there's quite a lot of newbies now. Well, not newbies here, but we're talking about Eric's 2024 presidential campaign. And if anybody has some questions about how you run politics, just ask. But I think in reference to social welfare, because like it's trying to, it's how do you kind of teach the populace who often live in short term to, I guess, plan for the future so that we don't have to rely on the government using our money for pensions.
Well, the reality is most people don't have to rely on the government. What they have to do is get through paycheck to paycheck to their next month's rent. Sometimes they have to live with family members, blah, 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 blah. When they do get old, and they go, well, what are they going to do then? There's no pensions and blah, 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 blah. The fact is, if all the working Americans had, from every paycheck, a third more money, I bet you those working Americans and family members and local community members and such would find a way to make sure the old people they valued didn't suffer. Most people understand that there's a family responsibility there. However, there's not disputing the fact that there are some old people who will not get services. That's why I'm saying there needs to be a clear, like, warning everybody in 10 years, if you turn 65 at this age, you will not receive Social Security. We have stopped taking it from you now. We've taken this weird lottery system to sort of take the money we need to continue to support these old people while they're still alive. After that, it's going to have to be you, your family, community members, etc., churches, whatever. You know, there are solutions in place that are available for people who need help. There are also, however, people who are unhelpable. We still have homeless people. It's not because of a lack of money thrown at the problem. Centralized solutions don't work. The solutions need to be driven by human motivation, individual vision, maybe individual vision that corrals together a group of people to proceed forward on a path of righteousness, basically. Is what happens when things go well. But when things go poorly, you've got individuals enforcing their vision on everybody else. And there's a clear line that we can use to distinguish between when that's happening and when the other's happening. Whether it's representative of the actual common good is irrelevant.
Candidate Eric, I have poop on my face. Can I have some money?
Okay, well, for those Americans out there who do have poop on your face, I'm not going to cut off poop on face subsidies right away, but you can expect your checks to dwindle quickly, and they will be going away soon. If you'd like to continue to receive them, you're gonna have to cake a lot more poop on your face, because like all government redistribution problems, it rewards the problem it's trying to solve.
So I still get money?
Well, if you get a job, you could get money that way.
Okay, I'll find an application.
That's a good idea.
Speaking of jobs, in your academy, are you hiring right now?
No, I've got a very small enrollment right now, and this is the reality. This is the reality of being a independent operator like I am, which is I pay the consequences of my own bad behavior. So last year I kind of half-assed it. I was distracted. I was distracted with TwFP, and then I was distracted with trying to get a lady, and then when I got Kimberly, I was distracted with Kimberly, and it ended up, you know, I kind of alienated some of my kids and families, and I mean, I just didn't do a good enough job to retain some of those clients. This year I started off really slim with with 7 kids. But even though it's a small team I've had in many years, this year I'm taking it seriously. And what that means is we went out of that first tournament. Grace won Lincoln Douglas, even though she was my only Lincoln Douglas entry. And the other schools had a lot more kids there, and they had more experienced kids there too, in Lincoln Douglas anyway. And my PF team got third, and I only had 2 PF team entries. So I made good. I've been taking it seriously all year, and it showed in the first tournament. Now Grace's mom has given me a couple referrals to a couple elementary kids that they want kind of a similar deal to what Grace is getting, but there's 2 of them, so it'll be twice as much money. This is how stuff grows. When I'm taking it seriously and I'm winning and parents are happy, I get referrals and I get new clients and people join the class and everything grows. Winning has a lot to do with that. So in that instance, you see I go up and down with the actual value I provide to people. If I'm more effective than other coaches and I actually provide the value, the being the better coach, then I will get clients and I get paid a lot. If I don't, I don't. This is something government programs don't have this impetus, right? They don't need to worry about whether they're effective, so they necessarily aren't.
Oh, okay.
To make those things grow, do you use fertilizer like manure?
To make America great again grow?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, my vision for America, if I had to have a little slogan, it would be America deserves a grown-up.
Well, I'm not sure Eric Strauss is the right guy.
It's weird, right? America deserves a grown-up child as president.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm not referencing Trump. Like, some could argue he's a pretty grown-up child himself.
That's true.
Literally,
it's the backwards kind of grown-up child, though. That's the wrong kind.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Obama was in the NTP, but he got to the presidency because he was so FE heavy, which meant his TI was pretty weak. And he didn't want to even consider the possibility that, his vision, his glorious vision for big government might be a terrible, terrible idea. He was so much about, well, let's be practical, let's compromise, that he ended up just doing more of the same fucking bureaucratic bullshit. At the end of the day, you've got to starve the beast. You've got to you got to make the hard cuts that people are going to be like, ouch, that's painful. You got to do some of that.
But then how do you get Congress to agree if you're not going to, because you can have a singular vision in your party, but if you can't get Congress to agree, then you're going to be in blockade.
Well, I mean, bills expire, bills need to be re-upped. Nothing passes my desk, probably. Not much of anything is going to pass my desk. It's all going to get vetoed. Because why? Half of it's unconstitutional. The other half's just stupid. We're going to start talking in this country about unintended consequences. How when government passes certain laws that we have to calculate all the harms. For example, one of the harms of those marijuana laws in New York is that girl who got raped by those 2 cops. That's not a harm of the fact that cops are inherently rapists. It's a harm of the fact that cops are empowered to choose arbitrarily to bust or not bust somebody for a crime of marijuana they're arbitrarily applied, necessarily. Why? Because cops don't have to take you in. After all, you didn't hurt anybody. They could let you go if you're really cool. That was a cool cop. He just threw away my weed and let me go. No, it wasn't a cool cop. It was an example of corruption. It was an example of the failure of a law enforcement professional to acknowledge or understand his moral duty as a human being, his legal duty as a peace officer, and the fundamental flaw in all consensual crimes, which is the fact that they are always necessarily applied arbitrarily, which rips away any rule of law justifications from those who affirm them. So, yeah, I mean, the first order of business when I get in there is I'm going to pardon every drug offender I can possibly pardon in the country that's not involved with any violent crimes of any sort, obviously. But see, I hate when they say that. Well, non-violent offenders. No, it's not non-violent offenders. Non-transgressive offenders, which are not offenders. They're non-transgressive. It's like saying non-offending offenders will be let go. Yeah, that's the problem. They're not offenders. What's an offense is you put him in a fucking cage. So all the non-transgressors that are currently being transgressed against by being kept in jail shall be set free and forthwith. I'm going to mightily encourage all manner of cryptocurrency, and I'm going to disallow and discourage, to the extent that it's done by some sort of Federal Reserve decree. Well, my presidential orders will be just as good as that, and we can play whose arbitrary fiat decree has more legitimacy, as I disassemble all regulatory attempts to control cryptocurrency. We want everyone in this country to use cryptocurrency as much as possible, because what does that do? It starves the beast. If you're using dark coin, the government has no idea what transactions you're engaged in. It's impossible for them to ever find out, unless you tell them. When you don't report that income, there's no way ever to find that out. Even on NPR, they're talking about how cryptocurrency is a smart investment for most investors now. Try to put at least some of their investment portfolio in cryptocurrencies. And it's not just because of the growth potential, which is dramatic in certain ones. I mean, some of them don't grow, some of them do. But, you know, Bitcoin obviously is skyrocketed. It's not just for that. It's for the fact that none of that income gets reported. No capital gains. No capital gains taxes. Nobody feels bad about not reporting income to the government. On NPR, they're talking about it in the most like button-up business meeting kind of fashion. Well, naturally, you're going to have some portion of your portfolio in cryptocurrencies, which will, of course, not be reported. So then, blah, 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 blah. What does that tell you? It tells you that Jews and poos are foos and doos. It tells you something. I don't remember where I was going with that. But yeah. Cryptocurrency. Oh, right. Cryptocurrency, to the extent that we can successfully get people to switch over to cryptocurrencies that are legitimately untraceable, then we will successfully solve the federal government, by and large. Now, there will probably eventually be implemented sales taxes and stuff, but sales taxes are more fair. They're avoidable, at least. You know, they don't punish you earning money, creating wealth. They punish you spending money on consumer goods. Now, that's not good for the economy either, but at least it means that when you do spend money on a consumer good and you pay more in sales taxes and you pay a lot less in, and you pay basically no income taxes or capital gains taxes or corporate taxes or other kind of bullshit taxes, well, then you can decide your tax schedule, so to speak. You can either pay the taxes of a poor person by living poor, or you can pay the taxes of a rich person by living rich. Either way, it doesn't punish you from earning more, so that's a good thing. I have lost all audio except for me, I guess.
Hey, Eric.
Eric, can you hear us?
Now I can hear you.
What just happened?
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. I saw Kit Kat's mouth move. That's how I knew that. Oh, I guess I can't hear you guys. So,
We were nodding and thumbs up.
could you hear me?
No.
Yeah,
Oh.
we heard you. I liked your proposal for listening to the show every day.
That's not my proposal.
You said that. No,
You said a lot of things.
those were your words.
Yeah, and
Well,
every American should have free ice cream and healthcare plan reformed. Everyone's gonna get a hearing aid, and Naylor is pardoned from all crimes.
Well,
And
look.
what was the other one, brother? You said was really good.
$1,000 a month if you have poop on your face.
Yeah. The thing is, the audio actually got recorded by the video I'm making right now, so there wasn't any drop in audio here. It was just on your guys' end, and on my end hearing you guys.
Aw, ours was so much better.
Right.
So in all seriousness, what's your opinion on like illegal immigration?
I mean, I don't have
Send
a
them all
strong
back.
opinion on immigration, except I will say I'm, by and large, in favor of looser immigration laws, except for, I mean, I'm with Trump on the Muslim immigrants.
Okay, serious question.
Hmm.
Do you have that stance because you can benefit from it financially? Possibly.
No, but that's a good point. That's true that I wasn't thinking about, I'm thinking about Mexicans. I wasn't thinking about Chinese people.
Mm-hmm.
But because that's normally when people talk about immigration as a political issue, they're talking about Mexicans. So, but you're right about that. I hadn't thought about Chinese people. No, the reason I had that position on immigration is because I just, I think in general, when world ecosystems balance out, that's a good thing. So it's like, if Mexicans really do find it more prosperous being low-level laborers here, then we want that to happen until it ceases to become more prosperous doing that. The thing is, no immigrant's going to come into the country and start taking upper-level jobs, and except for people who fly over with degrees and stuff, you know. But so we don't have to worry about they took our jobs. We don't have to worry about them taking our jobs per se, unless you're a low-level laborer, in which case you've got not really anything to complain about because you're saying, oh, there's more competition now for my total lack of skills. Yeah.
No, I don't agree with that because construction is pretty skillful.
Okay. I'm not saying it's not skillful, but so I guess if Mexicans come in with good construction skills or develop them when they're here, I don't see that as a problem. I don't see there being an inherent right to work that white people should have. You know, it's like if from my perspective as if I'm own the construction company, I want the best workers, whoever they are, and it's not like you're going to pay Mexicans less money on a construction site than you are white people.
Bullshit.
Not if it's union.
Well, not that I hold that belief myself. My personal belief is there's pretty much people are always looking for good laborers. So I think they're not really taking anybody's jobs because there's always. It's hard to. I had landscaping done this summer and some minor construction stuff done, and it's hard to. I called, I think, 10 landscapers, and only 3 called me back.
Right. Well, when I need a laborer, I go to Home Depot, and there are Mexicans standing there.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the demographic there in California, though. That's not really
I don't have a
happening
problem with it. There's
places
a
in the
lot of
US.
Mexicans around. There's a shit ton of Mexicans around. There's a shit ton of Chinese people around. I don't have a problem with it. I live in a neighborhood that's much more white than most. But I used to live in a neighborhood that was all Chinese. I like it a lot better here. I'm not saying I don't like it better here. I'm just saying that's not a reason to keep out immigrants.
I don't think anybody said that.
Well, I think to the extent that people are
Eric, can you hear now? Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So then when people will toss claims of Islamophobia against you, you can then point out to the various nature of the attacks in the name of Allah. So then my question is, how do you then vet immigrants who are Muslims because of Muslim majority countries who have skills and can benefit USA versus those who
Well, I mean, that's not my criteria. My point is, I want to tackle the legal specifics of the issue and say, no, the reason they should be excluded is because they are Muslim, specifically. And it has nothing to do with their utility or likelihood to be terrorists. That's not why we need to exclude them. I'm not worried about terrorism. Everybody else is freaking out about terrorism. Why? Why are we spending billions and trillions of dollars on anti-terrorism efforts when its actual scope, the actual slice of the total risk and damage pie is minuscule? It's not minuscule because we spend so much money preventing it. It's minuscule because it's not that big a problem. Sorry, it's not. Compared to like cancer or, I don't know, weather damage, like Puerto Rico hurricane damage and stuff like that, those things cause massively more damage than any kind of terrorist thing. But the only reason we spend so much time and money on terrorism is because, number one, it makes us feel vulnerable to random acts of violence. Number two, it makes the news because it's dramatic. And number three, it sort of fits in our worldview along with war. So we treat it as though we're being attacked by a foreign entity, rather than what we should treat it as, which is crime. A crime of senseless violence. A politically motivated crime of senseless violence. When we justify, when we legitimize terrorism by calling it terrorism and treating it as though it were a war and talking about them as though they were enemy combatants without affording them any of the actual legal international law rights afforded to enemy combatants, then we are the bad guy. And that needs to stop. We can deal with criminal killers as we've always dealt with criminal killers, as a matter of law enforcement. If we got to send SEAL Team 6 to go get some terrorists, fine. That can be our kind of contribution to the UN's. Okay, let's depussify the UN a little bit, fine. I'm not saying let's be whipping boys to anybody. I'm saying let's stop treating, the bully down the street as though it were the army of Red China. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it a political issue. What do you want? This is full, yeah. Trying to make it a political thing that can be leveraged rather than actually treating it as what it is, which is international crime. International crime that only gets more encouraged the more attention we pay to it, and the more legitimacy we afford, and the more alarmism we display about it. And people need to take accountability for that. If you're somebody who's out there being a politician or otherwise trying to justify bullshit policies with alarmist nonsense, then shame on you. The thing is, what am I going to bring to the presidency? the right policy for everything. And it's not ideologically driven. It's the right policy because I've done the analysis, I've made all the arguments for both sides, I know which is the right policy and which is not, and I understand it in the broadest framework, which is one of a fundamental humility that says, I can't predict what's going to happen if we do this. And I know from past experience and plenty of empirical evidence that shit tons of bad unintended consequences tend to happen when the government monopoly on use of force is employed brazenly, haphazardly, or otherwise in defiance of natural law, which precludes transgression upon those who transgressed upon nobody else. Use of force when it's legitimate has to be in response to aggression, otherwise it's not legitimate. Can that be a universal 100% true forever law for about everything? No, it can't, but it needs to be the fundamental framework by which we start talking about law, and when we start to scrap bad laws, we can scrap them based on those kind of analyses. When we start to debate new laws, we can debate them starting on those kind of analyses, because we're not talking about actual impacts to people's rights. Innocent people who've done nothing wrong, who are being victimized by these laws, then we are pulling the wool over our eyes, blinding ourselves to the truth, and choosing to be wicked.
I wanted to just say for those points, you talked about it's the qualification of being a Muslim that disqualifies you from immigration. What do you see in that religion that makes a person disqualified for being an American citizen?
Well, what I would say is, first of all, when we're talking about the average adherent or practicer of Islam in the modern world, we're not talking about a so-called moderate Muslim. The average adherent in most countries in the modern Muslim world favors things like death for people who insult the Prophet. So, number one element of the culture that is antithetical to progress, freedom, justice, democracy, etc., is the belief in the sacred's primacy over objectivity. In other words, there are some things you can't criticize, even if you're right, or even if you can justify it objectively. Even if I don't have the winning argument, I get to use violence because it's sacred. So this internalization of the notion of sacredness is a threat to civil society, fundamentally, because it says, you can't say what you want if it offends me, and that's my base level frame of reference. Second point, they have institutionalized apartheid against women in the majority of modern Muslim countries. Again, I'm not talking about the fringe population of terrorists. Most Muslims are terrorists. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the average Muslim. There were huge crowds in Tahrir Square insisting the United States deport to Egypt for prosecution and eventual death the maker of this video that made fun of Islam. That's the average Muslim. So when I say let's preclude people on the basis of Islam, it's because that's the one thing that correlates with all these authoritarian positions. That's the one thing that correlates with the lack of respect for individual rights. That's the one thing that correlates with a virulent form of communitarianism that's both disrespectful towards half the population and burdens the males with all sorts of weird shit too. It's not like it treats men well, but it's a theocratic worldview that justifies all kinds of nonsense based on how it actually is practiced, not what the book says. Okay, fuck what the book says. I'm not talking about that. I'm not comparing Christianity's book to Quran or anything like that. I'm saying this is how the religion is commonly actually practiced in the modern world. So we don't want those people.
So there's some people who, when they're applying to the USA, they may not be Muslims, but they can't expose themselves as apostate. So I guess how in the process would you protect those privacies?
Well, look, I think anybody who's immigrating to the country, frankly, I think we should make it easier to come in. In other words, we should allow more people to come in, but have more of a I like the idea of more of a betting process in which parties need to be determined to be rational. They need to be able to argue both sides of something they believe in. So, what's something you strongly believe in? Okay, now can you make all the arguments against that position? Okay, they need to be tested to see if they can think adequately. If they can't think adequately, then they need to be kept out because they're a danger. People who can't be objective, they're a danger to the extent that they contribute to the social whole. This is why democracy is dangerous and probably not a good idea. Because there are only some segments of the population who are qualified to engage in policy making for the society as a whole. And it's those who have the least scope of ambition with what they want to do with the power. People who have a lot of ambition about what they'd like to do with power to shape society, those are the ones you got to keep power out of the hands of. What I want to do with it is limit the extent to which individuals like myself or anybody else can use power to impose their will on everybody else, even when their ideas are bad, even when they're not factoring in unintended consequences, even when it does things like gets girls raped in the back of police vans. When they passed that pot law in New York, they didn't understand they were choosing to get that girl raped. Those cops might have been rapey anyway, but they needed a justification to detain her before they could rape her. And they didn't have a real one. But fortunately, someone passed a law saying now cops get to arbitrarily detain people if this is going on and choose to prosecute or let go as they see fit. Because it's a law that basically says if the cop likes you. So since we have an aristocracy now that has free will to grab people and detain them at their leisure, rape them. Now, granted, these cops are getting prosecuted. You know what their defense is? It was consensual. Of course, she wasn't there consensually. They had her detained. She wasn't under arrest, because of course they let her go after they're done raping her. Said, keep your mouth shut. Don't worry, we're going to let you go on the pot. Oh, thanks, officers. How can it possibly be consensual when you have detained somebody and they are not free to go? You say, well, I said, hey, do you want to have sex with me now? I've got this gun and you're in handcuffs and we told your friends to stop following the van and nobody can see in and we're both cops. So you want to? We're freaks, they said. Yeah, that was consensual. The thing is, people don't understand the meaning of the word consent. Consent means both parties are on equal footing. That there can be an actual agreement between them, between fully informed parties who are free to make the decision one way or the other without extortion or threats or implied threats or anything like that. It needs to actually be done in good faith. It's not enough to somehow trickily meet the letter of the contractual law. Good faith is part of that. So obviously it's not consensual. Obviously it's fucking horrific. And while the cops need to be held accountable and go to jail for 25 life or whatever they're going to get, they absolutely deserve every fucking minute of it. Also, the people who voted yes on those marijuana laws need to hold themselves accountable morally. They need to say, I should have anticipated this was going to happen. Or I should have been humble enough to realize that I couldn't anticipate what would happen. And that I was empowering some individuals to use force against others without any good justification. No legitimization through a response to aggression. Didn't aggress against anybody. And it is itself an example of aggression because it's non-responsive. And it's transgressive because the person has natural rights that are being violated. Natural rights, negative rights, constitutional rights as well. If it's a federal thing, if you want to buy incorporation to the states, then if it's a state thing, either. So, but most importantly, we know this. Every decent, smart human being knows this. They just choose not to think it matters very much. It's like saying, oh, well, you know, we may run over a few pedestrians, but we'll get there a little faster, so it's fine. Let's just not think about the pedestrians. No, that makes your whole trip invalid. You can no longer have fun at SeaWorld. You killed pedestrians on the way there because you were in a hurry to get a good parking space.
I know, it's pretty terrible. Like, I can see why some people may argue for people like Obama, even though he had a big socialist agenda, why he may not be an ENTP, because he let himself get so tripped over that he wasn't able to, I guess, as you said before, to really be aware of the consequences of his actions, and he caved in.
He thought he was going to compromise his way to victory. Because, of course, you don't have to have any principled positions on things if you're in favor of statism and redistribution. Because you can choose, well, I want to redistribute here, but not here, because those people aren't that in need. Well, this is about as much tax as we need. We could use some more, but we don't need to fund everything. Just some things. It has to address a general problem, but it doesn't have to address a violation of any sort. It could just be some people are poorer than others, or those people look like they're going to have trouble buying health insurance, according to us, because we've done some studies based on their reported income, which is probably maybe half what their actual income is. And of course, there's massive complexities to income because taxation is massively complex. There's 11,000 pages of federal tax law that needs to be one page. We need to repeal the income tax amendment.
So, this is more fun, like just MBTI purely. I heard an argument that he could be an ISFJ or an INFJ.
Who?
Obama.
I mean, he could be, I suppose, an ESFJ. If he were anything other than an ENTP, he would be a smart ESFJ. He's definitely Alpha Quadra. I have no doubt about that. And he's not an ISFJ. He's an E. But he's an ENTP. He smokes. He's an ENTP who never understood that you gotta get the fucking TI right. You can't slide by on approximations because everybody agrees with you. You got to be able to say exactly why this is right and that is wrong, and be precise. Not a bunch of fucking aphorisms about yada ye and yada ye and yada ye. I want to know why this contradiction is why you proceed forward with this course of action when this contradiction is unreconciled, sir. You know, I want those things pinned down. I want people pinned down to answer those goddamn questions.
Yeah, can see that.
Don't say that.
And Hillary Clinton, I think, is an ESTJ. You'd say that?
I think she's an I of some kind. I think she's probably. Well, she might be EN. I think she's an N. I don't know. She might be an ESTJ. She might be an ENTJ. I think we give her too much credit because of her level of success. Assume she's an intuitive, but she's not very smart.
No, I read that she might be an INTJ, and I was like, laughed out loud.
She's so bureaucratically comfortable. You know, ESTJ makes a lot of sense. I could also potentially buy ISTJ. She's pretty bad with the FE, but probably not quite that bad with the FE.
I could get ISTJ as well. It's just that she seems to have that TE ambition to her that I'd say that's more fundamentally dominant than SI.
Hillary Clinton's battle cry is, I can do this terrible idea more efficiently.
I think she has SI.
So
Dominant. ISTJ, I think.
ISTJ?
Probably.
She's got decent FE for ISTJ, but she knows basically how to keep her mouth shut so she doesn't reveal how awkward she is. She's quite awkward.
Yeah.
But
And then
most
Trump
of all,
is
she's a brainless fucking bureaucrat.
And then Trump
I see maybe ENTJ, but like you said, maybe we're giving her too much credit for being an intuitive.
Yeah. I mean, with this, I wouldn't have wanted Bernie Sanders anymore, but it's like he seemed the most reasonable.
Genuine.
Yeah, well, he seemed the most genuine for sure, but genuineness is not something I'm going to vote for. He seemed kind of reasonable, like maybe you could get through his thick head a little bit, whereas Hillary and Trump, Hillary seemed to just be like, but we're implementing this. And you go, okay, you need to get rid of that because it's toxic and it's killing everything. No, but we're implementing this. But I'm on step 4. Yeah, Hillary, shut the fuck up and go to jail. Now, Trump, obviously, he made his decisions before he got into office and is shocked to discover that the world's not this simple two-dimensional replica that he's got in his head, you know. But I yelled at North Korea, why didn't they stop being a problem? I totally threatened them. Yeah, you did. That was probably stupid, Trump. Anyway,
he's clearly an ESTP.
Yeah, he's such an ESTP. But you know what? He's the worst kind of ESTP. There are a lot better ESTPs than him. He has no moral center at all. He doesn't make moral considerations, from what I can tell.
Yeah. I think Sanders is an ENTJ.
Who? Sanders?
Yes. Or an ENFJ? No, I don't see that FE though.
No, I don't see it either. Now, he's someone I could buy as an ISFJ, potentially.
But he seems to be very no bullshit type personality from my research. Like,
so is Kimberly. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how no bullshit the ISFJs are. Kimberly is when I got her, I didn't make her anti-cop or libertarian and stuff like that. She came that way.
I always thought ISFJs is like trying to calm down everybody and keep everything in order and support tradition.
They rant about it once they're out of earshot. But like Kimberly yelled at this guy today because I got in a shouting match with somebody who tried to hey me when I didn't do anything. I like put the car in reverse, put my foot off the gas for a second, and put my foot off the brake for a second. So went back half second and stopped. I was 15 feet from this guy and his daughter, and he strides up, hey! I'm like, are you hey-ing me? Fuck no. And so then we exchanged yells, and you know, finally, as I was driving away, before we drove away, Kimberly screamed at him, "We were not parked there, you fucking moron! You pull up and let me in the car!" You know, so she's not afraid to yell at people.
Yeah.
She just doesn't, you know, she's the last one to join in the fracas. You know, I'll have yelled, he'll have yelled, maybe some other people have yelled, and then finally at the end she'll figure out what she wants to say, and then she'll be like, "Yeah, you're just jealous," something like that. You know, it's great. It's adorable.
But he doesn't seem to make much effort to connect emotionally, nor he has a secret disdain for what academics fail to ground ideas in the real world. You would describe Sanders' personality as winning. Sanders is such as glad-handing chores is visible joy of someone cleaning a litter box. Does he have an off mode? Not really. These are all quotes that I'm reading.
Okay, well, then, I mean, I'd say...
Maybe he's an INTP.
I doubt that. Maybe he's
He referred to Albert Einstein's "Why Socialism" when asked why was he a socialist.
Right. Well, look what he said there. Like, failure of academics to apply what they're saying to the real world. My critique is the failure of politicians to apply their real world solutions to the real world. They're deriving their solution models not from the real world, but from their bullshit, half-assed version of it they think in their head. And then they're not even checking the real world for impacts. They're only counting impacts that they want to count. They don't count impacts they don't want to count. For example, it's never a negative impact of a drug law when a drug user gets busted, because that's the point of the drug law. That's not a harm. Well, of course it's a harm. Of course it is. An American citizen is being harmed. So we have to ask ourselves, the justification is, well, this harm that we're doing is justified because it prevents bigger harms or stops this person from getting other people into drugs or whatever. Drugs don't get done because pushers push drugs on people. Drugs get done because people want to do drugs. I buy drugs because I want to get loaded, high on drugs. Many people in America, I'd say the vast majority of adults, have some sort of self-medicatory behavior. And the fact that some of those are considered totally legitimate and some of those are considered horrible crimes is insane. You know, I'm not somebody who likes to do Valium or Xanax or those kind of things, right? So that doesn't mean that I should condemn people who do that and say, well, it's fine to do meth because I do meth, but you shouldn't do Xanax, you should go to jail for that. Well, that's what everybody who drinks alcohol who doesn't hurl invective at drug laws is guilty of. They're guilty of exactly that. They're saying, well, you know, I like meth, so you shouldn't go to jail for meth, but those people, they're doing Xanax, I don't like Xanax, so they should go to jail. I'm doing alcohol, the most dangerous drug, and I don't like the drug they're doing, so I don't want to do that one, so it's fine for them to go to jail for that. No, because the drug distinction is arbitrary. Is it true that some drugs are worse than other drugs? Sure. Cocaine's a stupid ass fucking drug. Nobody should do it. If everybody could get meth, they wouldn't bother with it. I'm not joking.
This is weird because I sort of like it's so detached from my reality because I've never done drugs. People might call me a prude or whatever. It's just because like I never really seen the point.
Well, I don't do illegal drugs right now. For me, I have recommended by a doctor marijuana, and I have prescribed legal speed, which is not very different from methamphetamine. This is the point I want to drive home. The Adderall that I'm on is remarkably similar to methamphetamine. It's not exactly the same.
Except it's not methylated, which is significant to get that.
Okay, fine. So maybe methylating shit, maybe you're being a little bit of a risk taker to methylate your speed. I don't know. You know, maybe methylating your speed is not the greatest idea in the world. Maybe adding bacon fat to my burger is not the greatest idea in the world. Or maybe it is. Maybe I have a high metabolism and need a fatty burger. Maybe I prefer my speed methylated. Maybe it makes me feel extra pizzazz. Now, the thing is, like I said, I don't do any of that stuff. I don't do meth. I used to be a meth addict a long time ago. That stopped when Delilah was like 6 years old. And she's now 19. Now, keep in mind, I was still a good father. Not as good as Taylor by any stretch of the imagination, but I was still a good father. I loved my daughter. I took good care of her. She always knew I was there to love and take care of her. I spent way more time with her than a lot of parents did. I rode bikes with her to school and back and all that kind of stuff. But eventually I needed to get back in the labor force, make money and stuff, and so I had to quit doing the meth and get a job and stuff like that. I spent less time with my daughter then, but I was still a good father. And when I got a job at Burbay and she went into middle school, she went to school there so we could be together then too. These things, these father-daughter moments, they're not, there's no meth-centric relationship to it. It's not like I go, oh, well, that moment doesn't count as good because I was on meth. No, it doesn't work like that. That's not the real world. Okay, so if you're out there condemning drug
But is
users,
it true that meth? I agree with everything you're saying, except that Adderall and meth are very similar.
Okay, I will agree that meth is different than Adderall, and I will assert myself. I prefer Adderall. I like it better, and it's because meth tends to roll. Like, you're like 4 days in, and you're not sure how many hours of sleep you've gotten in the last 4 days.
Yeah.
You're just like, now I'm insane. But, for me, it's like good kind of insane in a certain way where I get creative. I make lots of weird jokes that I watch later and they aren't funny and stuff like that,
And you get shit done that you otherwise wouldn't get done.
Right. I mean, but the thing is, that's true of the Adderall. I get a lot of stuff done on Adderall. I do get a lot of stuff done on meth too. But I think I'm more effective, more balanced on the Adderall. It's not a huge difference, though, in terms of productivity.
I wanted to say for you, Eric, my question is like, I sort of have not ADHD and that I'm not focused. I just focus too much on one thing, and then I have trouble doing other things because my mind is so caught up on that doing the one thing.
Okay, well, that's not any sort of thing you need to drug away. That's just, you need to develop habits of attentional policing where you go, okay, it's been this long, I need to shift. Okay, I have that same problem of, when I'm on Adderall, I have the same problem. I stay focused on one thing for too long sometimes. Sometimes I'm not attending to the right tasks. Like, I'm attending to something that's not prioritized. Maybe I'm painting a sign out of the blue, which was not on the list of things to do. Maybe I'm painting the wrong color. Maybe I opened up a big gallon of paint that was yellow and started doing shit and Kimberly threw a little fit. Maybe all that stuff. Who knows? Maybe all that happened today.
Because what I tend to do is I really daydream a lot in the sense that I create characters.
Oh, that's a mental illness. Rosalyn, I can tell you, daydreaming, mental illness, you need to go on lithium right now. You're crazy. That's schizophrenic.
That's INFP.
Yeah, I still say she's an INTJ. I still say she's an INTJ.
No way.
She talks about being effective. She is effective. She's just daydreaming.
Hello there, beautiful.
Is that Joel?
Yes, look at her. She
Hi,
just
Joel.
lights up the whole screen.
Oh, you're not talking about me, Kim?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking
Oh,
to,
that was him. I thought that was
our little beauty over there.
It looks like she's got a sign behind her,
No,
SFJ
she's got
style.
A pretty
Let's
brass
stay home. Oh my gosh, Kim, I absolutely love it. We've got to get one of the signs.
Just in case you want to go look for one.
Where did you get it?
Home Goods.
Home Goods? I think we'll paint one maybe.
I just bought a new cute one too. Remember?
You did? Oh yes. We are so fortunate because I kept forgetting which room it was. We now have a sign in the kitchen that says kitchen. So, I kept going, is this the bathroom? And now I look, oh, it's the kitchen.
It's so frustrating when you walk into a room and you don't know which one you're in.
We've got a sign in the...
Walk back out, regroup, walk back in.
I'm constantly peeing in the fridge.
Okay, listen, you all. I live in a house that also doubles as a business. And my clients have a tendency to go in the wrong rooms.
We also have the laundry room. It's, of course, the sign is in the room. You have to be in the room to see the sign. So it kind of defeats the purpose if we're imagining it's directing them somehow. It's
Would you want
not.
to put a kitchen sign above the bed?
No. I think what we need is a dining room sign. We need a TV room sign, a bedroom sign, a bathroom sign.
I'm gonna get us a sign this forever that says, "This is where the magic happens."
This is where the magic happens is a good sign. I like that.
And put it in the kitchen.
I'm gonna get a tablecloth and have it embroidered onto the tablecloth. This is where the magic happens.
You should put it.
I would
You
be
put
so
it.
nervous eating at your table. I'd be like,
You should put it in like the corner of that cabinet up there or something. Some useless corner.
All the types have the most similar voice tone. Unless I were talking to them, I have trouble kind of determining their NI versus their SI just based on their voices.
You seem NI to me.
Possibly, yes. I'm planning to
She's
go
just a
to.
really smart INFP. A really, really smart INFP.
Hey, Jewel. So what do you think of this no beard thing?
I'm not gonna lie, I was a little. I saw like a video earlier,
Uh-huh.
and it's like it took me like just half a second. I'm like, something's wrong. What's wrong? And I'm like, oh no, the beard.
The beard and the mustache, yeah.
And the mustache, yeah. But then I heard him say he's gonna grow it back. So how do you feel about him?
I absolutely love seeing like his bare face, and like I'm enjoying it. But the thing is I'm like attracted to the Eric I met.
Right.
He's definitely better looking.
No, because it changes like a man's look so much.
I know, like I wanted to say was that he seems to. I think his face ages more when he doesn't have the beard.
Well,
See, I heard somebody say he looked younger without it, but
what it does, it accentuates the worst part of my face. Basically,
Your ring-
my face
his big
uncovered.
mouth.
My face uncovered accentuates the badness of my face. Basically.
Stop.
But if you get good coverage, then it browns out my head. It makes everything else seem less out of proportion with each other, and just generally makes me seem like more of a sturdy old fellow rather than like the criminal and who's the serial killer or something. It was kind of like,
Well, I think we need a president who's a beard like good old Abe Lincoln.
yeah, I'll have a beard. Don't worry.
He's definitely Abe Lincoln-esque.
Yeah.
It's just you get so used to seeing someone a certain way.
Yeah.
You know? Is what
Yeah.
it is.
Well, I love his beard though. Like it wasn't even like
It's sexy.
it was for me. I'm
Yeah.
really attracted to beards.
Part of the appeal. Did you wrap this beard like this? Did you wrap it?
No, my cat does.
Yeah, the cat does.
He gets so much beard loving from the cat that I don't.
Mm-mm. But we actually hummed and hawed a bit before we shaved it off because neither of us were anxious to shave it off, but we wanted to do the full commitment to the costume. So
Yeah.
unfortunately,
No, I saw the costume. It worked out well.
It was such a great costume. Unfortunately, Eric was feeling really crappy and feverish, and he was a good sport, but you know when you don't
Why is
feel
it
good,
so...
it was hard to get into it.
He's just had the flu recently, or what's going on?
He's had the flu twice in 2 weeks.
not the flu.
Yikes.
It's just a cold.
It is the flu.
It's like a 1-day cold, basically.
But he gets really sick and feverish and throws up and
Yeah.
like to
That's
the
a
point
flu.
to where he has to go to bed. He can't even function. Just a total shutdown.
Both instances, last Wednesday and this past Wednesday and the one before, those were the last 2 days I got sick. On both occasions, I had Adderall for the first time in a little while, and I took it, and the sickness kicked the ass of the Adderall on both occasions. It's like, my body said, no, you're not going to be wakeful right now. You're going to bed.
You're going to bed.
You're deathly ill. And so I just went to bed, and it was like I wasn't even on any Adderall. And then...
Hey, Nick. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, because you were talking about the Adderall, and it just reminded me of something Nick talked to me about earlier, but I didn't know. I figured I could share it because it's in the non-recording room.
Okay, let
We
me
told-
turn off the video then. Thanks for watching
Oh.
Talk with Spanish people, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. This is a 2-hour video. Wow, that's a long stream.